Hello, BookTube. This is yet another quick March of the Mammoths update. March of the Mammoths is a great BookTube event happening in March, created by Jason at Old Blues Chapter and Verse, and he is co-hosted by Lukash at A Cruel Reader's Thesis and Alex at Big Al Books. And it is a celebration, an encouragement for you to read the 800 plus page books that are sitting on your shelves. Most of us have accumulated one or two of those books. Some of us go after those books. And sometimes they can feel like the last thing in the world that you actually want to sigh, pull down off the shelf, and engage with. And that is, March of the Mammoths is designed to combat that. That attitude doesn't do these books justice. They can be wonderful, absolutely wonderful. And the video that I want to make today is probably something that you thought was inevitable, right? Which is a March of the Mammoths response video. That's bad enough. I'm making a bunch of them on my own, but I have a response video. Jason Harrigan, my longtime frenemy on the west coast of Ireland, made a video. I'll leave a link to it down below, in which he floated some possibilities of his own when thinking about the March of the Mammoths. Of course, I suspect that Jason is very much the same kind of reader as I am, which is that he doesn't need a month or a prompt or an event. If the yen strikes him to venture out into a 1,000-page book, he will just do it. But there's a fun involved in having a communal event. That's one of the things I was mentioning yesterday about March of the Mammoths, is that if you feel like you need a little encouragement, maybe a little pressure on the shoulder, you've got it for March of the Mammoths. You've got great company to finally take. We're not reading any one communal book, but you've got great company to so you don't feel like you're doing this alone. And Jason showed a whole bunch of candidate books on his channel. I wanted to mention a few of them myself here as excellent March of the Mammoths candidates for yourself, and also maybe for me. One of the ones he mentioned, I had never seen it in paperback. I don't think it ever had a paperback edition or even maybe a hardcover edition in the United States. I loved it. Just loved it. Fortunately, I have the ebook. It's Stephen Mithian. It's After the Ice, A Global History of Humanity for the last several thousand years. And it's like no other human global history that you have ever read. It's one of those weird books that doesn't take anything for granted. It has something quotable on every page. It has tons and tons of insights that will challenge what you thought. And those are just great. I hadn't even thought of this for March of the Mammoths, but when Jason showed it, he showed a battered trade paperback that I'd give anything to see a physical copy of this book. I'm not sure, though, when I say that, I'm not sure that I would grab that physical copy even if I did see it, because I have the ebook. And the ebook doesn't cost any money. It doesn't weigh anything. It doesn't attract any dust. It doesn't take up any shelf space. It's every bit as annotatable. It's not going anywhere. This ebook is on 10 devices that I have here and on a thumb drive. So I don't know why. Probably I wouldn't grab it. Probably I would like to hope that if I saw it for $5 at the Brattle Bookshop, I would remember, oh, hey, you have that. You don't need to worry about it. You have that book. But I wanted to recommend it to you. Definitely, I wanted to second the recommendation that from what you saw on Jason's channel. And then there were two others. He mentioned a few others too, as well as one of the joys of March of the Mammoths, or just our corner of BookTube in general, is that someone will hold up a book. They will talk about a book a little. They are not trying to proselytize. They are not trying to convince you to read the book. They'll just hold it up and talk about it themselves, but because they're not trying to convince you, and because you have been watching their channels and getting a sense of where your tastes align and differ, when they hold up that book, you suddenly start thinking about it again. He held up the Illuminatus trilogy. I haven't even held a copy of that book in my hand in probably 25 years. And when I did, I largely dismissed it. And here Jason is talking about it on his channel in a completely different way than I've ever even thought about it. As a hyper-literary series of maybe over-the-top in-jokes. That maybe this isn't overwhelmingly serious stuff, as I mistakenly took it to be. Perfect example of what I come to BookTube for. Not necessarily Jason. We have to put up with his kind, I imagine. Whenever you go out of your back stoop and just say the word books, and suddenly people like him show up. Actually, people like me as well. But one of the things I love about BookTube is that inadvertent recommendation where you will just be going through a long list of books, and you just want to talk about them. You're not trying to grab somebody by the sleeve and convince them, but you do. I will not think about the Illuminatus trilogy the same way as I used to since that video. And the next time I encounter it, I will almost certainly grab it and read it, where I would never have thought to do that otherwise. But Jason did make two recommendations, two possibilities that he's thinking about for March of the Mammoths that you might want to think about as well. And I wanted to second those and maybe encourage as well. And the first is this huge thing, Christianity, the first 3,000 years by Dermot McCullough. Great big thing. I thought it was hilarious. Jason held up a UK trade paperback of his copy of this book. I'm sure he has the hardcover. I do, so I'm sure he does. But when he held up his UK trade paperback that looked beautiful to me, I have a soft spot for UK trade paperbacks anyway. He said that it was obviously nearing the end of its reading life. I don't think it looked anything like as bad as this one. This thing's barely held together at all. And you might look at this thing, a 1,300-page history of Christianity and think, oh, no. But I'm telling you, this is incredibly engaging. Incredibly. And as Jason points out, it doesn't have any ideological dog in the race. It tells the story good and bad. But the main thing that recommends it for me is the beautiful writing. Any of you who've maybe tried this author's gigantic biography of Cromwell will know that it doesn't read like it looks at all. It reads beautifully, just beautifully, right from the first chapter of this book, but just going on and on and on. The chapters in here on McCullough also wrote a separate book on the Protestant Reformation, and the parts, the threads weaving together until finally the climax of the Reformation in this book, they're amazingly good. The whole of it is just amazingly good. I know that big, fat books on Christianity can be a little turgid, but this is not one of them. So a possible candidate, definitely, for your March of the Mammoths. And another possibility that Jason mentioned that I want to finish up with is one that's cropping up on a few people's lists. It is widely considered one of the first conventional examples of the novel. It is, in my opinion, one of the earliest novels and also one of the best novels ever written, even though it's 1,000 years old. And that's Murasaki Shikabu's The Tale of Genji. This is the Norton Critical Edition, so it's wider, so it doesn't look as thick, but this thing is huge. It's bigger than this book, and it's a weird novel as well. It's about Genji. It's about a young man named Genji who is he's not smarter than anybody else. He's probably a little bit handsomer than anyone else, but he's not luckier than anyone else. He's certainly not more virtuous than anyone else. You just sort of follow him, and the narrative never really questions why you're going to follow his story. It just sort of assumes that you will want to know about him and the women who come into his life and the women that he casts out of his life and all the people around him. And it's almost impossible to describe the weird beauty of this book. It is repulsive in a lot of its actions. A lot of the behaviors of its characters are deeply repulsive. But the book itself is magic. And it's very long. It would certainly count as March of the Mammoths. And Jason held up, I think he held up the Seidensticker, which is, the Seidensticker translation was the second major translation into English of the unabridged Genji. And I think he held up a beautiful edition that he has. A 2-volume edition from Tuttle or something like that. Just gorgeous. If on the blessed day when Mark Richardson and I actually managed to go to Jason's house, and one of us lures him out the front door while the other one goes in the back door with a truck, that's one of the first things I'm going for is his edition of Genji, because it is beautiful. It only lacks one thing, and your Genji may lack one thing as well. But fortunately, the Norton Critical Edition is for sale in the U.S. market. You can go on Amazon and buy a copy in order to make sure that your copy of Genji, whether you're reading it multiple times or whether it's the first time you're reading it, doesn't lack the most important thing, which is my name. You want my name to be on your Tale of Genji, which will not be true. This is the Dennis Washburn translation, and if you get the paperback of the Dennis Washburn Tale of Genji, it will say Open Letters Monthly, but it won't say my name. And you want it to say my name. The Norton Critical Edition has my name printed on the book, which is the only thing that Murasaki Shikabu did not think about. Anyway, I strongly recommend Genji. It is, no matter what, there have been 4 major English language translations. They all have their charms. They all have their strengths. I would recommend any one of them. Again, I would say with Genji, I think we're lucky that we have 4 to choose from. I would say go and sample the first 10 pages of each one. To see whose approach to it you prefer. Simple as that. They're all really. I can say this for I know everything there's to know about all four of those English language translations. They are all done extremely conscientiously. They were done on slightly different philosophies of translation and certainly different styles, but they were extremely conscientious. This is not a case of, for instance, the Butcher and Lang translation of the Iliad. There is no incompetence in those four, not any, and no unscrupulousness either. All of those translators wanted to do the best possible job for their readership. You are their readership. So what you have to do is just line up those translations and see whose company you prefer. As simple as that. I suspect that your choice will go to the Norton Critical Edition of the Washburn translation for one key reason. I'm suspecting that's true, but I could be wrong. Anyway, I wanted to make a March of the Mammoths update, a sort of commentary on someone else's March of the Mammoths. I promise I will not keep doing this, but I'll leave a link to Jason's video down below. You're going to want to watch it anyway. And just to celebrate, to put forward my 2 cents worth on some very good suggestions. Dermot Rapella is a very good suggestion. After the Ice is a very good suggestion in terms of great big books. A lot of you are looking for recommendations. You need look no further. Jason and Mark and I have been through our share of 1,000-page books, so I wanted to second his possibilities. So I'll wrap this up, and I will be back. Thank you, BookTube.